Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Here's Clark thinking about a bomb, the hesitation to take the lead. Reese the lane. Clark to Reese. What you've been waiting for.
And Diaz ropes this one pretty deep to left. Racing back, Classe still going back. That ball hits the top of the wall, and it's over the wall. A home run for Yainer Diaz. And the Astros lead is 4-2.
Well, here Jonas swings and drives one deep out into right center field, headed toward the bullpen. It's gone. Into the bullpen. Jonah wastes no time in taking advantage of that opportunity. His 9th home run of the year gives Texas a 3-0 lead.
Ohtani, right field, forget about it. A massive shot. Wow. 473 feet for Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers' 5th home run of the night.
Just about a stress-free championship major Sunday that you will ever see. Xander Schauffele in at 9 under, 65. His 2nd major championship about to become official.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Welcome back, DB.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome.
How you doing?
I'm good now that I can hear. How about that?
Hearing is good.
Oh, yeah, beats the alternative.
It's a positive, especially in this business.
Yeah, I saw a funny TikTok the other day where this girl was crying, and she said she's going to stop doing edibles because she watched a movie on mute and thought she was going deaf. So I kind of found that funny.
Gotta be careful. Gotta be careful with drugs.
Yeah,
Kids. You gotta be careful out there.
She's never doing that again. So I feel like it definitely beats the alternative.
So I gotta ask. So we send out the lineup tweets every morning. What did you search in your gift bar to get that particular gift? Because I'm always curious when I see gifts. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that one before. What people search for to find that?
Yeah, just dancing black kids.
Okay, fair enough.
I ain't pretty straightforward.
I didn't know if there
gave me several to choose from, and I chuckled at that one.
That's a pretty good one.
I mean, what says my ridiculous personality, other than having been gone a week? I almost took today, but I couldn't do it. We have one more day of big camp.
Yeah,
but I'm like, I gotta get back.
How was camp?
Camp was great.
Yeah.
Camp was great. We're further along than we were a year ago in some places, and especially up front along the offensive line.
Yeah.
But not obviously as far along as some in some spots from a year ago.
Yeah, you're replacing some pieces.
Yeah, we had an experience. But one thing, it's early, but one thing I do like is this team is a little more outwardly hungry.
Ooh, okay.
Just different personality types. Anthony never said a ton.
Yeah.
Caleb doesn't say anything.
Kind of like the cool as a cucumber crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This team is not like that.
Yeah. They got a little chip.
Yeah, I think because it's been ingrained since February, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
A lot of you guys haven't done anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that part's pretty cool.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because you've got, whether it's high school or college or whatever, because of the turnover in players, right? And especially you guys had a decent amount. It's like this group hasn't won a championship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about that.
It's really easy from like the outside being like, a couple state championships in a row and whatever. But like your quarterback hasn't won a state championship.
Yeah, we haven't won. You guys were making fun of me last week about the fake chips on the shoulder and, the Georgia reference and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
But again, that's the motivation. It's a real thing. And you just get a vibe. You can get a vibe of a team's personality because you never know. There were some times, last year I was like, especially early, I'm like, are we too cool for school?
Like a little too like business-like almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But then obviously it was fine.
I think it worked out okay.
So that's why I'm curious to hear from like Michigan.
Yeah.
And
Michigan's an interesting one because not only do you have the players, you got the coach turnover as well. And then you go, you just have like it's totally different.
And I just think it's fascinating, man, when you're the hunted.
You know what's weird is we made fun of
it's incredible.
We made fun of Georgia a little bit.
We did not. I was mad at you guys because I told you if they believe it, that's all that matters.
I think everybody on this stage made fun of Georgia a little bit. But like if Michigan said that, I'd actually buy it because nobody's talking about Michigan.
I know.
Like if they're like, hey, we're the defending champs, guys. I don't know if people remember this. I'd buy that chip on their shoulder because myself included, I just kind of look at them and I go, I don't know. You get to 9, that's probably a good year.
Yeah, I just think I'm always fascinated by it because I know firsthand the degree of difficulty.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I always get into it with people when they ask, would you rather do the hunting or be the hunter? And I always tell people my answer is the same. It depends on how much you love preparation. Like if most great hunters love getting ready for the hunt.
Because okay, so make that distinction for me because you're saying going hunting versus being the hunter, not being the hunted.
Yeah.
Okay, so make that distinction for me.
The hunter. So the hunter is everybody else in the Big Ten trying to run down Michigan.
Okay.
They're the hunters.
Yeah.
Michigan's who's being hunted.
Okay.
So, because if you're the hunted, you're in a position coming sometimes off of success, and you can stay. It's survival.
Yeah.
Some people don't always embrace that, though. But sometimes they can succumb, and
it's harder to stay hungry in that spot sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And I do feel like being like going hunting is easier.
Yeah. If you're an eat what you kill kind of guy, that's right in your wheelhouse. I'll be out I'm in Stanton, not this week, but next week, the weekend of the 9th, and they're the defending champs.
Yeah.
And it was an impressive fashion. And they have a lot of fellas back.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was thinking about is, like, what's their off season been like? Right? You have a couple guys being highly recruited. It's easy to kind of get distracted.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about demeanor from Michigan tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? I'm looking at Major League Baseball with the Rangers. Like, why is it so hard to repeat in anything?
Yeah. I mean, that's across the board.
Especially if you have the blueprint.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you already know how to get there.
Right?
Well, you know what?
But all of these other things can creep in. And it's funny, too. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
I've done this job for a long time. And I got some funny pictures. I'm going to send one to Sipple. You get this year today.
Like your memories or whatever.
Memories, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever I was trying to say. And all these pictures kept popping up from, it went 7 years, and went 5 years, whatever. And there are these pictures at Big Ten Media Days. There's this infamous picture like Sipple's taking a stance, like this boxer stance.
Yeah.
And this media throng around Bill Moose. And, the one from, that was the one where, he infamously or famously said, we need to just get to 6 wins.
Yeah.
Like, can we get to 6 wins?
And everybody lost their mind.
Everybody literally lost their mind.
Because that was heading into year 2 of Frost.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
We're getting like 9. What are you doing?
And
they did not get 9.
He was dead on.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just where people's mindsets are with coming into this deal, I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because Caleb surprised his brother. He and I are the only two that knew that he was coming home. It's popped up yesterday, the weekend,
Yeah.
Saturday. And he was asking me about the week or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm headed to Indy for Big Ten Media Days. And I think he forgets part of at least being remotely decent at my job is the ability to be objective, even though I definitely have biases.
Yeah.
Like, I have rooting interests. And there are also things I don't like that I need to be professional and not come off like that.
Sure.
Right? So I don't know how you can be around those other teams. And it's just funny. It's just funny, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, wow, he's been indoctrinated already.
Yeah. It's been like, what, 2 months?
Where it's just about them.
Yeah.
And I found that funny, and I'm like, in my head, I hope everybody else is like that too, because
You mean on the roster?
yeah,
Yeah.
because it is you against everybody else in that conference, and I've never been a conference guy, except
Like rooting for conference?
yes,
Yeah.
except for this week.
Mm.
This week, I am cheering my brains out for the Big Ten Conference, right? So it's like, I'm cheering, I'm rooting for the conference momentarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when Lanning and Riley and Coach Rule and Coach Fair and these guys, when they roll into this room and take the podium, I'm cheering for the conference. I know, right? It's like,
Well,
it doesn't sound right, but it's.
Well, no, I kind of get it because
But once
I bristle up a little bit at the
'cause
SEC stuff a little bit.
in 5 days,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, go Nebraska,
Right.
right when those guys report to camp.
Yeah. I don't root for, like, I wasn't rooting for Michigan in the national title game or anything like that.
Me neither.
I definitely, but I don't know if that was, I don't root for the conference or I was a Penix guy and DeBoer, like I really like DeBoer, obviously. I just always,
Apparently he can recruit.
yeah, he's not doing too bad.
Jeez.
Hit the ground running there. But, I do kind of, like, I do want the Big Ten to push back on the SEC.
We talked about that last week, and one of those things. Like, I'm not mad. Like, the infomercial that the SEC does.
No, that's their job.
That's
what they're supposed to be doing.
I'm not mad at it.
But then the Big Ten needs to do the same thing. Like, they need to also put out the infomercial.
I don't know if they can, but I'm totally with you. See, the problem with the Big Ten as a conference in its message is I've said this for years, and this came from Big Game James Delaney, where it's this capitalistic approach, right? Make all the money we can, but then it's kind of has this socialist principles where we're for, and I'm going to throw Nebraska into this discussion for the sake of the discussion because they haven't won either.
Sure, yeah.
Right? It's not about, and I'm not talking about revenue generators. I'm talking about
Winners.
Taking care of teams that haven't held up their end of the deal since being in the conference. But the Big Ten overdoes that, right? The Marylands and Nebraska and
like Rutgers,
Illinois and Rutgers, right?
Yeah.
Where the difference between that and the SEC is they allow whatever they feel about their individuality. It permeates as a conference as a whole. Like,
they bang on the drum for excellence.
It's incredible. And so,
is there any part of it that you think is, like, I get the sense from the Big Ten a lot of times, and not just with media day stuff, but kind of in general, that they feel like they're too, like they're too good to self-promote.
Yes. And believe me, like, that's a human thing too.
Sure, yeah. But like
that's a human thing
for sure.
Too, where you have to have a certain level of comfortability to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, man, it's.
I just always kind of get the vibe that they think, oh, we're the Big Ten, we don't have to do that.
Well, and we said this.
Or like it's almost lowbrow that the SEC does it.
Forever. Remember when we allowed ourselves for like a couple of months to think when the new television deal came out, like what would they do with the number of conference games? Could it possibly go back to 8? Oh my gosh, wait, they would think 10? Because of the revenue sharing for the television packages, almost for the sake of having somebody be in better position to win a national championship.
Yeah.
So it kind of permeates this thing. Well, it's so important to bring the bottom closer to the middle and the middle closer to the top. I'm not sure if they care enough about having their top teams be in position to play for championships. Now, just so happens a couple of teams have overcome that.
Sure.
And been able to put their – but I think it promoted this thing that they don't necessarily care as much about winning. Does that make – like, it kind of snuck up on us like, oh, man, they're just cool with getting to the Rose Bowl. And,
well, and I think the Rose Bowl was a big part of that, right? Because they put so much emphasis on it for so long.
So I think it allowed us to and maybe rightfully so. Maybe it is like that. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Maybe they're like winning
a greater good kind of thing other than
winning the Big
national
10.
Dominance.
Yeah, maybe winning the Big Ten was more important to them than winning a national title.
Because we're going to figure out what keeps them motivated.
Yeah.
You already have the most money. You've got a great television. You have great television partners. You have a great media deal. Can you stay on the gas for championships?
Yeah. Like you get a taste of it with Michigan. Does that make everybody else hungry?
Can you stay on the gas as a conference?
Because Ohio State stays on the gas.
Listen, hey, see, we can win a championship.
Yeah.
We can win a championship doing it this way. And, oh, by the way, we make money. See, that would be my whole message this week.
Yeah, 100%.
That would be my whole message.
We make the most money and we can win championships.
You guys do realize our method worked. We made the most money we could by keeping our inventory in-house, sharing it amongst ourselves with the extra conference game. Extra. It doesn't even sound right now. Hey, and by the way, guys, we won a national championship too. It can be done.
Yeah.
I just don't know if we'll get that.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll be the messaging.
Well, you have the defending national champ, and you have two teams that are in everybody's top 6 to have a chance to win it
100%.
In Ohio State and Oregon.
Yeah.
Like,
some people have Penn State in the playoffs. And I don't necessarily buy it, but that's nationally.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's a semi-popular pick.
I'm with you.
In the bottom half of 12.
I told you, I'm iffy on Aller.
I am too. So I'm iffy on Franklin.
It's like, but what we have found out in the last 10, 12 days, though, is there are a lot of people that are a lot higher on USC than we are.
Yeah, I'm not on that train.
God,
I can't get there.
It's just hard for me to envision them playing good defense. Now, it's not hard enough for me to envision that they'll be better than they have been the last 2 years because they have been.
But are they going to be better enough to make up for the Caleb Williams effect?
You have to be really, really good up front in this conference.
And I don't know that they are.
So, that part.
And they don't have the magic eraser anymore.
Yeah.
That's what I look at. I'm not saying they're going to be 4-8 or anything, right? But this looks like an 8-win football team to me, like somewhere in that neighborhood.
For me, that would be a lot.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's fair.
Like, doesn't 8 seem good? I mean, look at their
Yeah, they won 8. They won 8 last year.
Yeah,
But I'm kind of assuming, okay, the quarterback play takes a step back, the defense takes a step forward. Maybe you break even from where you were last year.
Schedule isn't daunting.
Yeah. So I kind of think 7 would be disappointing for them. I really do.
Oh, it's SC.
Yes. But I mean, even from just a talent standpoint, but if the defense is really not, if the defense doesn't take a couple steps forward, it could get ugly.
Yeah. I mean, your conference does have the 2 representatives in the last national championship game.
Yeah.
Will you act like that?
Yeah.
Because you can always get a feel.
Yeah. Well, there's it's not to get all economical on people, right? But you kind of brought up the models here. The SEC sort of is like Reaganomics, like trickle down. Like, hey, we're going to elevate the top and hope it works down its way down to the bottom. But if it doesn't, we've got this thing to champion, right? Whereas the Big Ten is more of kind of like the mid-century model of American economics, where it's like, hey, we're going to try and get a robust group of teams in the middle of the conference to be really, really good, and we think that'll raise the entire ship up. I don't know. In college football, I don't know which one's right. But what
and the Big Ten hasn't done it long enough to see.
Right.
We just know the economic payout is won out.
Yes.
Can they continue to produce champions?
Because from an economic standpoint, if you're a television partner, we've got 80% of their games are good.
You much rather be Rutgers getting that payout than Mississippi State.
100%. And if you're, for the most part, if you're the actual television networks, you'd rather show like mid to like middle third of the Big Ten, I think, than you would.
Yeah, see, that part is the part I think. I don't know. I do think people now listen. I mean, is Missouri and let's say
like who's
Vanderbilt? I don't know.
Yeah, Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Like who's?
Even though I do think Missouri and Kentucky are good football teams.
100%.
Right?
Are they appealing football teams though? That's the question. Because outside of the really top part of the SEC, I don't know how many of those teams are appealing.
But now they've added to the depth, though.
Yeah. With Texas and Oklahoma change the equation there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But so do USC, Washington, Oregon. You know what I mean? Like, so that'll be interesting to see how it plays out with the two sort of philosophical models. But even if you're the Big Ten, that doesn't mean you can't self-promote. Like, just because that's your model doesn't mean you can't self-promote. And maybe it sounds different than the SEC does, right? But you can say, hey, not only do we have the national champion, but look at the depth of our conference.
You lost one of your greatest spokesmen, and Harbaugh. But you're quietly I've said this about him, and I think this is no secret. And maybe I pay more attention to him than most because I'm a big press conference guy. But you're getting one in Dan Lanning.
Lanning's legit.
Oh yeah,
he's doing some good things.
He's a compelling guy to listen to,
and he runs it pretty good.
Yeah,
like he's not going to take a back seat,
and he'll actually say stuff.
Oh yeah,
like that's the interesting thing about a Harbaugh or a Lanning is like they'll actually give you something of substance.
You remember last year how we felt, and I was in the room, so maybe it was different because he was kind of Harbaugh was waiting under the tunnel after Nebraska got done. And when Harbaugh got done, remember it was the whole suspension and what did they do wrong and, under investigation. And I just remember, and I said this out loud, leaving that room, he was so confident it came across as either defiant or smug. It was incredible.
He does come across as smug.
Like
a lot.
He just was like in the line of questionings and I'm like, this guy's incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving. I told this to Concert Chris because he had given me a key to use the room so I could get cleaned up before I go to the airport. And I go, he strikes me as the type of guy that knows something that none of us know.
Yeah.
And that dude won a championship. But I did say the same thing about Kirk Ferentz too. He was amazingly good, and I thought that team would struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
And he knew something we all didn't know either.
Because
that team was pretty good.
100% accurate. Coming up next, we'll set up the show and let you know what's coming up today. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Coming up on the show today, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald at 8 a.m. Then we've also got Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South. He covers college football, specifically, you know, the ones in the South, as is.
Yeah, but still, you know.
Yeah, but still, you know. Shout out to Art.
TK.
Yeah, I think so.
He'll be joining us at 9.
You know,
Big fan of the middle of the pack fan base in the SEC. Is that the difference?
So, and I kind of countered with maybe the fan bases are better, but I think the product is better in the Big Ten, in the middle of the pack. And I don't know which the TV networks care about more, whether the fan base or the product, but it's a fair point to bring up. I just also don't know how much of that's perception versus reality. You know, we have this idea of this rabid Southern college football fan, right? And we don't have that sense of the Big Ten for the most part. Even at like Ohio State, where they are, you know, obviously pretty aggressive, or Penn State or wherever, right? We don't really have that. We don't think of them like LSU or Bama or Georgia. But I also didn't think of Georgia's fan base that way 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know how much of it's the perception of them as a winning conference versus the reality of their fans actually do care. It actually does mean more, or you know, I don't know.
I definitely, like, at first blush, I'm not taking Stark Vegas over Iowa City.
Absolutely not. Like
right?
what's Kentucky's football fan base?
Like, you don't think I don't think people think, ooh, Iowa, tough, crazy fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Go there and play.
Yeah, not easy.
It absolutely is a rabid fan base. Like, so I get the perception thing.
Yeah.
I think people just think either, insert school like Iowa or I guess Lincoln doesn't get that because I do think people think Nebraska fans are nuts, and maybe that's just because we can come across as obnoxious on social media.
I don't know if they think Nebraska fans are nuts. I think they're devoted.
Oh, well, imagine if Nebraska was good.
Oh, yeah, we'd be crazy.
So like if you believe USA Today and my note, they came out with their media poll.
Mm-hmm.
It's not media poll, their conference poll.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shoot, they have Nebraska 8th in the Big Ten. Can you imagine if Nebraska was 8th in the Big Ten? If Nebraska was 8th in the Big Ten, they're at minimum 7 wins.
Yeah, because sorry, I always have to recalibrate with how many teams are in each conference now. I'm like 8th. That's not that great. I was like, oh no, that's middle. That's the middle.
It's more than in the middle.
It's top half of the middle.
So it's like,
yeah. I mean, you're at least at 7 wins, maybe more.
And I'm like, if we got to 7 as the starting point in year 2, you think we're allowed now on social media? I mean, it would be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you need all this. This fan base is going to cheer regardless. Imagine having something to cheer about.
Yeah, to actually have something to be excited about. I've tried to tell that to everybody that works at Hurrdat, except for us, are like 22 years old, basically.
Everybody.
And they're incredible at their jobs, but they just, they're young, right? So I was trying to tell them, and I was obviously young the last time Nebraska was really good, but I remember it. And I was like, you guys have no idea what it gets like around here. Like when Nebraska is actually good and nationally relevant, it's not even the same place. And it's just a better place to live, if I'm being honest. Like, it's more fun to live here when Nebraska's good at football. Like, I fully believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it, and maybe winning does that. I felt like, went down that rabbit hole 2-3 weeks ago where the Big Ten was just rolling classic games.
Yeah.
I mean, go to East Lansing in like 2011.
Yeah.
That place was raucous.
100%.
Right? So,
yeah.
I mean, I think the fan bases are more than capable. I think maybe if you're going to compare the two, it's more about winning, I think, in the Big Ten than it is in the SEC. Their consistent passion is because they're supporting their product, because some haven't been very good at all.
Yeah.
And you'll still hear cowbells. But, I mean, I would be curious I should just do it on the Flyers, pull up, Mississippi State's attendance, or certainly
South Carolina.
South Carolina. I'm not going to use Vandy.
Yeah, because that's bottom of the pack rather than middle. Even Kentucky,
who's been good.
Yeah, but I never get the sense of Kentucky that they care. It seems like they're always just waiting for basketball season. Honestly.
So I think maybe it's less outcome dependent.
Maybe
in the SEC.
Maybe.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I think that their median is higher, like their average is higher to start off with, but I also don't know that their peak is any better, right? Like there might be a little more variance with Big Ten schools.
Could you imagine anybody celebrating schools coming to your conference the way that the SEC did Oklahoma and Texas? I felt like that was incredible.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Right, I'm like, they threw these guys basically a ticker tape parade. Would the Big Ten do that?
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of when the Big Three went to Miami, where, like, yeah, you for other teams you announce right? You have the press conference, you make a big deal about it. You don't sell tickets and have a light show.
Mhm.
Like, that doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't think has ever happened anywhere else, right? That's what it felt like to me was, hey, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Like, I don't care. That's whatever you want to do, right? But it's certainly unusual.
I actually would be for that. And this is coming from a guy that doesn't necessarily rally for the conference.
Yeah.
But I think that would be I think that would be awesome.
I have
right?
thought
and
was,
maybe listen, full disclosure,
yeah.
right? I just got to tell you where the crux of how I feel comes from. I think I feel a little disjointed, or I'm not consistent with that because I didn't like how Nebraska was received.
Sure.
So maybe
thought it was a little cold shouldery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
think that's
waiting
fair.
for share. Like, the whole thing was a mess.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're just getting ready to be historically bad upon entering the conference. So maybe that has something to do with it. So maybe I want like a warm welcome.
Yeah. You're like, you want for others what you didn't get for yourself.
Right.
I get that.
So
I get that.
It's like,
that's a very parental feeling. Like, I feel like that's how a lot of parents operate is, hey, I didn't have this growing up. I'm going to make sure my kids have this.
Yeah, maybe it's I don't even give the inkling that I'm maturing, because that is not the case. I'm just saying, like, maybe that has something to do with it.
No, I could see that. It was not a warm reception when Nebraska came to the Big Ten.
And you get all the helmets back.
Yeah.
You get your classic Rose Bowl matchups, and the Rose Bowl was so important to you for so many years. Like, now it's right here in your backyard.
Yeah,
like,
make it
happen, Captain.
Kind of get in the regular season now instead of, because the Rose Bowl has never been less important, right?
Oh.
And bowl games in general, that's just the direction the sport's going, which I don't have nostalgia for bowl games necessarily. I want good football at the end of the season, and if we get the best version of a national champion, like, great. I don't know if that's what this particular version of the playoff is going to give us or not, but I don't care about having a de-emphasis on the bowl games. But the Big Ten has kind of allowed themselves to carry on a lot of those traditions that they seem to care about so much because of the expansion.
Not the only. I don't typically use extremes, but one thing I could see coming from the expansion of playing meaningful games late is less opting out.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So, like, that's the immediate thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. Because
outside of that, and again, full disclosure, it's because it didn't happen the way that I wanted it to, is why I'm bothered.
Yeah. You wanted them to get their ducks in a row before they expanded.
Yeah, I mean, which
is a reasonable ask.
And it's
then we're going to be chasing it now forever.
It's anarchy.
Yeah, we're going to be trying to get the ducks in a row, whether
we can't even
conference games.
We can't even get the payouts right.
Right. The revenue share, the whole thing. And I get that. Now we're just always going to be chasing it, right? Because the bigger the playoff gets, the more money that comes in, the more questions you got to answer. You're going to be chasing those answers forever because you didn't do it up front.
Yeah, and here's the other thing on a random. You answer me this when we come back. If the revenue sharing and the payouts are going to fall under some semblance of Title IX guidelines, do the female sports have to sign? Do they have to be part of the antitrust?
I would imagine, because that's where the money's coming from.
There's going to be some unintended consequences.
We'll talk about that coming up next.
Right? That's a fair question.
No, it's 100% a fair question. And there's some follow-up questions that I think are going to have to be answered as well. We'll see if anybody answers them or if we just keep adding more teams to the playoff. Who knows? That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We'll be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Ravi, can I say my own name here? Ravi Lulla.
Fee.
We are here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar.
You could go
and
double
Grill.
L if it's easier.
Yeah, I'll just start calling myself L2 like DB does, even though there's 3 L's in there. It's like when everybody called it BW3s, and you're like, there's only 2 W's there. Do you know why they did it? You know why they did that, though?
Yeah, because it was going to be – I asked you, and you told me.
Oh, okay. We've had this conversation before?
Yeah, I think I asked you on air.
Probably. It's because there was an extra W at one point. It was something called Wicks.
Yes. Wicks were and you told me Wicks were the potato.
Yeah, they were the potato wedges back in.
See, I listen to you sometimes.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, like that one stuck.
See, well, it's because you like wings.
Yes.
Speaking of which,
yeah, man, 12 for 12. That's new.
It is new. I was the listeners last week were very concerned that you weren't here to see it.
Oh, I'm glad they care.
They did. They were like, hey, "Have you told DB?"
Guess what? I read. I just now saw it over a commercial break. And what was I getting ready to tell you? I was like, hey, man,
that's a pretty good deal.
It is. And their man.
Their wings are good. I get their wings all.
Oh, yeah.
When I'm here all the time during football season, I get the wings a lot.
Listen, I'm telling you, pay the $1 upcharge for the breading.
Yeah? Well, I just, I go boneless.
Shane.
So.
Yeah.
It's fire.
You're a child.
It's fire.
Shane, you did the breading, didn't you?
Yeah, it's worth $1.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I like boneless.
It might have gone up a little.
Comes with breading.
No, I mean like a baby piece of fried chicken. I don't mean like. No, it doesn't. That's the skin.
Boneless wings?
Oh yeah, you're talking boneless. Listen, you lost me with boneless. I stopped listening. I'm sorry.
I was like, boneless wings come with breading, DB. I don't know what you think that is. I don't know what you think a chicken is made out of, but it ain't that.
Although, according to one of my Twitter mentions, apparently they did rank. I have guys that do rankings of nuggets, and the nuggets that one restaurant that doesn't open on Sundays serves that doesn't have breading. Their nuggets, they have like breadingless nuggets as well as their
like the grilled ones.
Yeah. Apparently those are incredible.
I don't know that I've had those.
Yeah, I don't go to that place. I think it's incredibly overrated.
So I do because there's one right by my house.
Wait, there is?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, on 132nd?
Yeah.
That used to be my Costco.
But, yeah, like in the Costco parking lot.
And it's terrible to get into.
Yeah, I don't mess around.
It is, but I can get in the back way, and it's way easier.
This is my Costco
now. No, I will say they have a couple items that I'm a fan of that I can get after, but half the time I don't go there just because the line's too long and I'm just not sitting there.
I would say of my kiddos, that is for sure one's favorite, but it doesn't come up a ton other than that.
Are you guys like a Raising Cane's family?
As Micah would say, he would call them mid.
Yeah, I find it severely overrated. I find Raising Cane's really overrated.
I think it's an incredible business model, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, hey, we do one thing really, really well, and that's it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Are you a fan of
And full
when you
disclosure,
get a chicken sandwich that it's tenders and not a piece of chicken.
no.
I don't know. Like,
I want it to be one solid piece of chicken.
yeah.
Because otherwise it's like falling out of my sandwich, and I'm not trying to do that.
But everybody does these chicken sandwiches now.
Like the chicken tender sandwiches.
Just in general.
Yeah. And to be fair, part of my issue with Raising Cane's might be I got burnt out on it because when I was coaching, that's all the guys wanted.
Yeah,
so
the last time I remember going there was we went to go watch Maya play. This is at Westland, and it was just Mike and I. And for whatever reason, he hadn't eaten.
Yeah.
And there's one right on the way to
I know where
Wesleyan,
that is.
and that's what he wanted, and he was good. And then we went from there to Kearney because Wesleyan played Kearney that night in hoops.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like
that just sounds like a lot.
Are you guys going?
It was okay. That's my little road dog now.
Not as much driving as we're about to do this week.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Well, you know,
it sounded like such a good idea a month ago.
Well,
so here's like Big Ten Media Days in as a whole.
Yeah,
and now I'm like, I don't know. You want to split? You want to do a split show?
You're just not trying to go?
No, I
don't. I was just hoping for one night, not two.
Yeah. It's a tough turnaround.
Stop it. Yeah, and I'm because I'm rolling Friday morning here.
It was tough.
Yeah, you're without me Friday.
It's fine. I still don't know who I'm doing the show with, but maybe
get Jared in here.
Me and Shane. God, he's a nut job. How'd you keep him kind of corralled?
See, I like doing shows with him. I think it's pretty fun.
He's a funny dude.
Yeah.
So
I thought he did a good job. I really
so the
did.
first time he did.
I mean, Elijah and Anna did too. I'm not.
So the first time I sat down with those guys.
Yeah.
And they had like 34 beers on the table. I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm like, I may say anything because they'll ask me anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not, 34 is maybe an exaggeration.
I mean, for four of them, that
might
have been
about right.
I would say that might be about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not super high.
And they're like, "You're not a beer guy," and I was like, "Man, you guys."
Well, I mean, they do the show at a brewery.
I know.
So that's one.
Doing a lot. They're like those big what do you call the things?
Like the vats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just all
They're
around.
enormous.
Like that's a lot of.
No, it's a good crew though. Those guys, those are good dudes. But
him and I spent like 30 minutes after the show on Friday.
Really?
Walking around his Jeep looking for Easter eggs.
You love doing that with people's Jeeps.
You know what? He got me too. I'm not even going to make fun of Jared. Like, good on him because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
He showed me like 15.
Yeah.
On his.
Well,
vehicle.
he did it with mine. Like we walked around mine. I'm not making fun because him and I did the exact same thing. We walked around mine. Like, oh, there's that one. There's that one over there.
Yeah,
he's got a Bigfoot on his.
Oh, does he?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I don't have a Bigfoot. I think.
That's cute.
Well, you know.
It got me too, though.
I think I got like a duck or something. But no, you see, I was pleased with the shows last week. We did all right. We did okay. Which you helped out. I appreciate that calling in.
Yeah, it was weird. Coach Yonk was when we had that triangular 7-on-7. He's like, "Oh, turn on the show. You weren't on." I was like, "Oh, unfortunately, that must mean you're here." What do you mean, unfortunately? I gave him a big hug, though. I like him.
I was terrified.
That was
on Friday.
That was a cool coaching group.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had Miller North staff and we had prep staff.
Yeah, staffs. That's an interesting group there.
They're just guys that I get
that you just like.
Yeah.
I
know that's unpopular for.
Yeah, why are you being friends with other schools?
I know.
Come on, DB.
I'm just not that dude.
Why you root for other kids?
I'm not that dude.
How dare you?
People want me to be. I'm not mad. Like
DB doesn't stay petty like I do.
No. Because I like solutions.
Yeah. Well, and which I appreciate this about you. You're in it for the kids.
100%.
So whether they go to Westside or they go to Miller North or Prep or Miller South or wherever else, like you want the kids to succeed.
Yep.
And in order for the kids to succeed, they have to have good coaches.
Yep.
Right? So
yes,
it's an easy equation. That doesn't mean you're not trying to beat their heads in any less.
Although I did have one of my players last week ask me about another guy that sometimes comes up on this show, and he plays the same position. And he asked me if I was just being nice. Nah, man. I'm not. Are you offended?
That's a beautiful question.
He's like, nah, I'm just asking. He and his dad listen to the show.
Can I guess? Can I? I think I know.
I'll have to tell you off air.
I think I know. What was the question you were going to ask me?
About the Title IX and the revenue sharing.
Yeah.
Because with that coming down last week, and I read both there's probably 3 articles.
Yeah.
It's still ambiguous.
It is. They basically just said.
And why would only some of the guys have to sign that be part of the antitrust? Either you all or you aren't if you're taking part of the payout, right?
If you're taking part of the revenue share, I would imagine you have to sign the deal, right, to be involved. But I think everybody has to be involved is what they're saying. That's how I read it. I read it as, hey, this is going to fall under Title IX compliance, which means everyone has to be involved, which means theoretically everyone would have to sign on.
But they can't all get the same.
Well, that's the $1 million question, or the $20 million question, as it were, right? Is how are they going to split it? And how are they going to categorize it? Because if it's categorized as financial aid, they do have to split it evenly.
And I don't think they can.
And if they don't categorize it as financial aid,
then
you can have a little more leeway on how it's distributed.
And the antitrust really comes into play.
Yes, because then you really have to get those antitrust exemptions that the pro sports have to make sure that
you don't come back and get sued later on.
But if I'm looking at this and I'm trying not to get sued down the line, I think I have to distribute it evenly. Like if I'm a school or a conference.
Yeah.
And I get the argument against it. I really do. But if I'm looking at, okay, all of the things we've seen with the NCAA and the conferences and the athlete empowerment and everything like that, and athlete rights era, which, again, all of those things needed to happen. I don't know that they've happened well, but they needed to happen in one form or fashion. If I'm looking at that as a school administrator, I go, yeah, we better split this pot evenly, otherwise we're getting sued. We're going to be right back here. And we can get to this at another point, that's going to make your NIL operation more important than it's ever been before.
It's at 1,000%. That's why every other show, probably every other segment, I can't talk about 1890 enough.
Yeah, and the things that not just them, but what they'll need to do and every other collective will need to do to stay in compliance themselves, because you can't just write blank checks anymore.
Yeah, man, we can get creative, though.
You can get real creative, and I think you're going to have to, because that's going to make the difference even more so than it did before. Coming up next, we got Sam McKewon coming up here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. What's up, Sam? Sam, you there?
I am here. Sorry, there's something wrong with my Bluetooth this morning. I'm not sure what it is.
Oh, no worries. I was just
Can
going
you
to
hear
blame
me
it on. Yeah, I was just going to blame it on Shane.
No, I don't know what's going on.
Always easy.
I don't know. I got a new phone, so I'm trying to figure out what's what and who's who.
You didn't switch over to Team Android like DB, did you?
No.
Oh, thank God.
Wow.
We stayed Apple.
I just got back. Like that's how it's going down, huh? Sam, how you been, bud? Are you ready for this 3-day excursion?
I am ready. Yeah, I am.
So I'm trying to make this case to Ravi that I don't know if I necessarily want the Big Ten to be like the SEC, but I would like the Big Ten to focus on how their model, at least momentarily, has worked with revenue sharing and the number of conference games and getting a national championship out of it. Is that asking too much, Sam?
No, it's not. I mean, I could argue that you should feel free to ask for more, from the league. I think, there's been some change within the league, obviously with commissioners, and that may play some role in the way that communications have sort of went up and down. And then in 2020, it was obvious that the Big Ten was not prepared to play football, or at least Michigan wasn't. And, as a result, there was a lot of infighting and battling, and I'm not entirely sure the league recovered from that yet. I think it's probably on one page now, and it can kind of turn the page. Now with these 4 new schools, in the league, it can kind of turn the page toward just something different. And no, I mean, I think the Big Ten is in a very good spot. It needs to grow, as I wrote in my rewind today. It really needs to grow beyond the Michigan, Ohio State identity. And it's struggled. In football, it's frankly struggled to do that. And in basketball, it has not emerged the way that it should have, in the NCAA tournaments, although Purdue had a great run last year. It's just struggled to elevate beyond Michigan and Ohio State, and it needs to. And this 12-team playoff should give the Big Ten an opportunity to do that, to get Penn State or Oregon or, somebody else in there and create a little bit different narrative around the league, other than, the most important game is the day after Thanksgiving, and that team is the best team in the league.
Sam, how have they gotten away with because it's a little bit of a mixed message, right? Because, I mean, Delaney for so long was hey, we want that 9th game so we can use revenue to bring the bottom closer to the middle and the middle closer to the top. You kind of had like this socialist philosophy, but we knew it was a capitalist venture, right? It was, they wanted more money, but they've always kind of promoted, hey, we're going to make as much money as we can for everybody, maybe at the sake of winning a championship. How do you think we've gotten to, or continue to, still only promote basically 2 teams, even though it has been a healthy league top to bottom model that has kind of been crammed down our throats?
Yeah, so that's a great way of putting it. And I think there's one, the success on the field shows it, right? I mean, Ohio State and Michigan have won the last 7 Big Ten championships. And so you can't change the fact that that's true. Now, would that have happened if they were in different divisions? I don't know. I'd be surprised if that were the case. But yeah, the problem with, the bottom kind of coming up, and it has. I mean, Maryland and Rutgers have gotten better. Is that, the one division was just so easily sidelined in the national conversation, that being the West. The standard bearer in the West has been Iowa the last 3 or 4 years, and Iowa's just not been, they just haven't been very good in the biggest moments. They've been perfectly good. Yeah. They've been perfectly good before they get to the Big Ten championship. But when they get to the Big Ten championship, the results have been embarrassing. That's been hard, I think, for that side of the division. Northwestern wasn't terribly competitive against Ohio State in 2020. And then Purdue, put up a fight against Michigan a couple of years ago, but it still wasn't the same. The reality is that, Iowa's done an incredible job of winning football games up until they get to Indianapolis, and then they don't look like they belong on the same field. And it's kind of the old problem the Big 12 North used to have. And it's part of why I think the Big 12 was volatile, is because, you could not feel comfortable with, one side of the division consistently underperforming against the other side. I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think the Big 12 South won every conference title from 2004 to 2010, I think. And so, and then I think they won a bunch of other ones, I think, too. But, that's part of it. I think that's part of the challenge. And now you go to an 18-team league, and a team like Iowa, who, by the way, I think is going to be pretty darn good again. Yeah. But Iowa has to have an offense now. Like, they can't just, go 9 wins and win the West and then show up in Indianapolis and lose 32-3 or whatever it was, 26-0. And then hey, well, we won a division. We got some hardware. You don't get a hardware for finishing 5th. And so Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, they're all going to have to decide what kind of programs they want to be. And I think Nebraska's actually decided that. Matt Rule and Nebraska have decided what kind of program they want to be. Now they have to be that kind of program. And those are 2 different things.
Sam, I'm, as we're talking through this kind of conference identity issue, do you think there's anything the Big Ten could have done sooner to try and get away from the Michigan, Ohio State dominance, or was it going to take bringing in other teams? I think that's kind of what they were maybe trying to do when they brought in Nebraska, and Nebraska didn't really live up to their end of the bargain. But could they have just gone divisionless with the teams they had and gotten a similar solution, or did they need to bring in these other teams to try and even things out a little bit?
Hang on, before you answer that, Sam, it's weird too, because it's not like they embrace Penn State either. I mean, Penn State is telling Nebraska, hey, hold my Gatorade on introduction into the league. They've never really had open arms. Is this now the time?
It could be the time. I think that's going to be up to the league. The league has really struggled to, I don't know. I mean, and I kind of wrote about it again in the Rewind today. You just look at the league's Twitter accounts. You look at the way they approach media days, although it's gotten better by putting it in Lucas Oil Stadium. 5 years ago, we were in the basement of some hotel.
Oh, yeah.
It looked like a steam fitter union meeting.
Yep.
It was ridiculous.
Yep.
We were in the basement of a hotel. There were stains all over the walls. I'm like, what are they doing?
How about that carpet from like 68 or 67?
Yeah.
That
was Delaney. That was Delaney's era.
It was
incredible.
incredible.
It was like, hey, we're going to be in the bottom of a Chicago hotel, and we're going to be in the basement. We're going to, this is what you get. And it's just never quite been, the Big Ten just, I think, is somewhat uncomfortable kind of being that league. But there's two things I think they could have done. One, they could have gone without divisions and just accepted that the East and the West did not work, and that Nebraska wasn't going to be Nebraska and Wisconsin wasn't going to be Wisconsin. And you can't bake league divisions on things that happened in 08, 09, and 2010 before Nebraska got there. Two, they really could have, and they've gotten a little bit better at this, but they need to stage more conference games in September and like right away. And because what's happening is the games get very backloaded. You get into the November, and these teams beat the crap out of each other. They don't have a ton of skill on some of these teams. It gets cold. Teams just play in the middle of the field, and they just hammer each other. And I think you've got to find a way to get some football games in September, where Michigan's playing Iowa on September 14th, when everybody's fresh, or Michigan's playing Maryland, or those games are being played early in the season so that the competitiveness is a little bit different and maybe everybody's a little fresh. The third thing that I would have done, and the league's never done this, is to put together what you would call a combine, and you would stage it, I don't know, at Northwestern maybe, and you would have a nationwide combine in June, a satellite camp that allowed players from all over the country to come to Chicago and try out in front of 18 different teams or 14 different teams. And all the coaches would staff it, and it'd be a 3-day event. That would be your satellite camp. And so that you could expose the schools and the kids to each other, and you could build some recruiting relationships that might bear fruit versus schools having to try to figure out a way to crack into North Carolina or South Carolina or Virginia. That you would bring the players, and the players would come. They would come from all over the country, and they'd be like, oh, I get to go try out for 18 Big Ten teams? I'll go do it. And I think it would have changed the recruiting profile of the league a little bit, because the league needs better players, too. It needs a little bit better player. And we'll see if that happens with an 18-team model.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we were talking about the kind of the revenue share and how, it wasn't just a perception of how Nebraska was entered into the league. It was also the fiscal part of it. Do you think they learned from that mistake or with this new batch of teams, or is it just, hey, we weren't landing these teams unless we gave them full shares right away, and so that's what we had to do to get the deal done?
UCLA and USC got full shares. Oregon and Washington got half shares.
Right.
I think they added Oregon and Washington for competitive purposes. I don't think that Oregon and Washington are going to make them any money. I really don't. I don't think Florida State or Clemson would either. And if I were the Big Ten, I would stand on it for 5 years and just say, no, this is who we are. You need to figure out if this is going to be what it's going to be, and not worry too much about what other people do. They got to get better at the group that they have. And that was the thing that I feel like, an area where they can continue to grow is you don't need to add any more teams unless it's Notre Dame, and then you can add Notre Dame and just add Notre Dame. But you don't need to add any more teams. You certainly don't need to add Florida State and Clemson. There's nothing to add there. It surprises me on a pretty consistent basis that these league commissioners have literally listened to Twitter and sports writers about what they should do. I was not surprised they added USC and UCLA. I think that was a risky play a little bit. But adding Oregon and Washington improves the quality of play in the league, but it's not going to make the league any more money. And maybe it gives USC and UCLA travel partners. That's about it. But if they ever got to 20, they'd have to split the league into two, and you'd have two divisions again. And
I think they're playing the long game, though, Sam. I think they're playing the long game for revenue. Maybe not in the next year or two.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's possible. I'm not I don't disagree with that. I think that I'm just not sure that there's going to be more revenue. I think they're going to this is about as much money as they're going to be able to make on this thing, and you know, there's a certain threshold where more money you get, it's really just money. And so I'll be curious to see. I think it's possible that the Big Ten contracts before it adds again. That would be my.
Oh, that's kind of a hot take. That's interesting. Interesting.
I think that's possible. I think all the rules are out the window at this point in the SEC and the Big Ten. There's no reason. The SEC is more loyal than the Big Ten in some ways, but like, there's no particular reason the SEC
to its product. You mean relative to its product?
Yeah, like there's no reason the SEC needs to keep Vanderbilt. There's no reason. Like the SEC doesn't have to. And you're getting to the point now where like the relationships between the university presidents is no longer, you know, I've grown up in SEC universities. I love what the identity the league has created. Let's keep that. I'm a business person from this part of the country or that part of the country, and my job is to basically function like, you know, a private equity firm. And when you begin to inject that level of thinking into academia and university processes, everything's out the window. Like you're just no longer operating with, you know, handshake deals and, hey, I looked that person in the eye and I promised them that stuff doesn't exist anymore. Like, so I think there's a possibility that the SEC contracts too. There's a possibility the Big 12 contracts. Like there's all kinds of stuff at this point because now everybody's added everybody, and now they get to decide over the next 5 years or so, are we happy being this large? Are we happy with this much travel? Do we really need to be this way? I think that's going to be the ongoing question of the leagues, and we'll see what happens.
Listening to this, I'm hoping we have enough time to get to Knight and some of his thoughts here. But real quick, Sam, I'm listening to this conversation since we started, and I'm thinking about teams in position and without the divisions and the whole nine. You know, a team that I think is in a real precarious spot for this year? How would you like to be Penn State? Like, this seems like I'm like, oh, shoot, I say this all the time for James Franklin. It seems like a pivotal year for Penn State because they could get passed up in a hurry, and they could never really secure the third spot in the conference since they'd been there. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely know what you mean. They have a hard schedule. I know they don't have any rivalry games, but you know they have a weird opening game that, you know, they decided to play West Virginia in a home and home, and they got to go to Morgantown. That's gonna be tough. That'd be a hard game. And then you know, it gets a little easier for a while, and then they get UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Washington all in a row, and you know they've got to find a way to win 4 or 5 there, and then they go Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland, and you know it's manageable at the end. I don't think by then. I think Purdue will potentially fire his coach, which I think is manifestly unfair. But I think he's going to get a raw deal at Purdue.
I just don't see how they win 5 games.
Yeah, well, their schedule is very hard, and it's
brutal.
And you know he wasn't left much by Brom. Brom got out of there at the right time, and Walter's contract is such that, you know, they can fire him if they really want to, and go after somebody else. I don't know. I like him, but I
Me too.
have concerns about, you know, the nature of the business. Anyway, here's the thing: Penn State has an opportunity to be, you know, really good too. Like they have a chance to win 11 games. The schedule allows for it if they can you know, do well in the middle of the schedule. They can make the playoff for the first time, which I think would be a big deal for them. And but you're absolutely right; they could end up being the number 4 or 5 team in the league. I mean, I am personally not selecting Michigan for the playoff. I think they've lost too much, and I don't know that they have a cause the way that they did last year. I'm not saying their cause last year was exactly just, but they were playing for something larger than themselves.
God, defensively, though, they could be outstanding.
They could be for sure. But you know, they're a team that when I say not picking them for the playoff, all I'm saying is 9-3.
Yeah.
And you look at their schedule, and I see 9. So there's a chance for Penn State to get in the playoff this year. I think Michigan is probably a 9-3 team.
Vegas agrees with you. Penn State's win total is half a game higher than Michigan's.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with Texas. That has a lot to do with Texas on the schedule. And then they got Oregon on that schedule. And they get Oregon at Ann Arbor, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I've been to Ann Arbor. I know what the crowd is there. You can shut that crowd up fast. So, they get Oregon and then they get Ohio State. And I just think Penn State has a chance. Now, if they don't make the playoff this year and they go 9-3, which is possible, you look at their schedule, and if they lose the season opener, that 9-3 is very possible. Then I think, you have an ongoing conversation about the relationship between James Franklin and the school. The thing is, unless Lincoln Riley leaves USC, I don't know where James Franklin's going to go. He's not going to the NFL. And so, where does he go in college? I don't know. That's a good question. I think he's going to stay at Penn State until a better job opens up. He didn't go after the UCLA job, and they would have hired him in a second. So he didn't want that job. So I think
why he's not going to go? He's not going to go backwards unless he has to, and he didn't have to. At UCLA would be backwards.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'd be backwards in terms of competitiveness. Yes, I would want to live in Westwood.
Yeah, I wouldn't want those financial constraints.
Right. That's very true. And they have some definitely out there. So yeah, I mean, I think Penn State. That's one of the key questions: is why did Oregon suddenly become the number 2 team in the league, and Penn State? How do they jump Penn State that fast? And I think a lot of it has to do with national reputation, the fact that Penn State doesn't play a lot of national college football games, performances in bowls. Penn State's won a couple bowl games. Oregon's won a couple too. So, it's just Penn State won the Rose Bowl a couple years ago. Penn State's a good program, but yet all of us think Oregon jumped them. How'd that happen? That's a question I think Penn State's going to have to work through over the next year.
Is it just as simple as we like Lanning more than we like Franklin?
Well, I think they have a better team.
Yeah, I do think they're better also. But is it?
They're better on offense. Yeah.
Oh, that D line.
They're way better on offense.
That D line is going to be a handful, and you have a day one corner. You have 2 day one secondary guys too in Oregon. That defense could be tough.
Yeah, they're a good team. I picked them second too. So they're a good team. They're a good team. They have their defense is fast. It's a little undersized. Late in the season, teams got to try to run the ball on them. You cannot argue that Lanning got outcoached 3 times in a row by Kalen DeBoer and his staff. They did. All 3 times, Oregon was picked to win those games, even the one in Seattle, and all 3 times they lost.
And they kept progressively getting worse.
Yeah, it's
right?
the jury is still out on whether he is a great coach. The decisions that were made in Seattle were not the best decisions last year. I think, and he even admitted that he thought his coaching lost him the game. So, he's got to coach it. He's had the more talented team, I think, in 97% of the games he's played. That will change a little bit this year. They'll play Ohio State. They will not be more talented than Ohio State. Ohio State will have equal talent, better talent in some spots. So we'll see how Oregon handles that. When they've had to do it the last couple of years, they have not won those games. We'll see if they do this year.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always, and I'm sure we'll see you kicking around Indy.
All right, take care. Bye.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Some interesting stuff he brought up there. Take care,
bye.
Have a good day. Love you. Bye. He didn't hit us with the love you like Lance did.
It's interesting though with Oregon and that Washington game, because I know the Washington game, second one finished 34-31, but it didn't feel like that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, We're
It was 3
also
points both times.
we're also forgetting or
I
not
think.
mentioning
So 36-33.
the fact that maybe Kalen DeBoer is just that.
Well, you
just
like
that
you,
guy.
No, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
Yeah.
But like that's on the table, right?
Yeah. See if his record should increase exponentially like his program. I don't know if that's going to be a fair assessment, though.
We'll see. Coming up next, more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
He's got to coach it. He's had the more talented team, I think, in like 97% of the games he's played. That will change a little bit this year. They'll play Ohio State. They will not be more talented than Ohio State. Ohio State will have equal talent, better talent in some spots. So we'll see how Oregon handles that. When they've had to do it the last couple of years, they have not won those games. We'll see if they do this year.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and I have to tell you that the 2024 Hail Varsity Yearbook is here. You can secure your pre-order today by going to hurrdatsports.com. The Hail Varsity Yearbook features exclusive interviews, position breakdowns, one-of-a-kind photos, and more, so you get the inside look at the 2024 season. Go to hurrdatsports.com to pre-order your copy today through August 11th. A lot of really interesting stuff there from Sam.
Yeah.
Some of which I agreed with, some of which I am not so sure. The thing, and I know we want to get to Penn State because there's I think we both kind of think that they should be better than they are. And that we're sort of always just waiting for them to get over the hump.
I don't know if that's the national perception or my own, but it seems that way because now
because I feel the same way. So I don't know if it's just us and we're the outliers here, kind of like apparently we are with USC and what we think they'll be this year. But we both kind of agree that it seems like they should be better than their results have been. But then we went back and looked at the recruiting rankings because my thought was, well, maybe we think that because their talent would dictate they should be better. You know how like Miami underachieves a lot with their talent, or whoever, pick a team. Texas A&M underachieves with their talent the last few years with Jimbo. But then we look back, and I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised at what the recruiting rankings actually were.
Yeah, so when you look at since 2016.
Okay.
Because James Franklin got there in 14.
Okay.
So he won 7 games his first 2 years. So since 2016, how many double-digit win seasons do you think James Franklin has had?
3.
4.
Okay.
Do you realize they won 11 games in 2022?
No.
They won 10 last year.
I knew they won 10 last year.
They won 11 in 2019. They won 11 in 2017. They won 11 in 2016.
So the outlier were really the COVID years.
20
and 21.
Yep. They won 4 in 2020. They won 7 in 2021. He won 9 in 18.
Because I remember having a conversation with a Penn State beat writer sometime after 2021, where he'd gone 4-4 or 4-3.
So he went 4-5 in 2020.
4-5 in 2020, and then 7-6 in 7-6, right?
Yeah.
In 2021. And I remember having this conversation with a Penn State beat writer during the 2022 or going up to the 2022 season, and asking him, like, if he has another year like this, he's getting fired, right? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. They're like, there's a chance, because I think, it seemed things had soured with some of the boosters, that, they're like, he probably needs to win double-digit games to save his job this year. Like, this particular guy, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, it was 3 years ago. He goes, he probably gets fired at 9 wins because he's not, at that point, he won't have won the right games.
So, and I'm looking at this because we have some on the field stuff. Like, this always comes up with James Franklin, right? In game.
Mm-hmm.
But when you pit it against his recruiting rankings, the National Composite Recruiting Rankings,
it's been pretty good
since 2018.
Okay.
2018, they were 6th composite.
Okay.
2019, they were 12. 2020, they were 15. 2021, they were 21st. 2022, they were 6th. 2023, they were 14th. And 2024, they were 14th. I think if the perception, where we're wrong with the perception is
that their talent's better than,
it's that they've recruited better than at least the experts land them.
I would have, if you had asked me, hey, how many of their classes since 2018 were in the top 10? Because that's kind of how I perceived them, was a top 10 recruiter.
Me too.
I would have told you all but like one.
Yeah.
I was like, there's probably like a 15 in there. There's an outlier.
And to the contrary, he's only had one top 10 class. In that stretch.
Yeah, the 6.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so maybe we're just wrong on the perception, on the talent.
I don't have another answer for it.
So my conclusion here is maybe James Franklin's better than we think.
He might be better than we think. I'm just because it's interesting because
when you look at the actual data,
people give him a hard time.
Yeah, I don't look at him. I mean, I think I just said, I don't know if I said on air or off air. I was like, yeah, I don't really trust James Franklin. Because you said, I don't trust Aller, and I was like, I don't either. I also don't trust Franklin.
Yeah.
But I don't have a great reason.
Yeah. And I think he's been able to overcome some shaky offensive line play because it hasn't been great.
Yeah.
And they still win.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with that. Like, I really don't. Because my perception of him is that he's kind of overrated as a coach and that he's lucky to still have his job. But he's been pretty good.
Maybe the negativity comes from, maybe two.
Not beating Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah, that and and I think they maybe do want him to recruit better.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you're Penn State, you probably think you should be a top 10 recruiting school.
God, it's hard though.
You probably think. I'm not saying you should be. They probably think they should be.
Yeah.
Like if you're Nebraska, where do you think Nebraska should recruit on a regular basis?
I think top 25.
Yeah, I was gonna say top 20, but so we're in the same neighborhood, right?
Yeah. I mean, if Penn State's pulling these classes and they're winning, and Nebraska's top 25 and they're not, I think we need to be realistic.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I also think if Nebraska
you can be realistic without settling, right? I mean, you can shoot for whatever you want.
So, but if Nebraska starts winning at, let's say they win at a comparable rate to James Franklin. So 8, 9, or 9 to 11 wins, which is really good, right? I'm not saying that's not anything.
Okay.
But let's say they were to win at that level over the course of a handful of years. To me, that elevates their recruiting into probably a top 20 range.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe a little higher even.
What they've been able to do without winning is kind of incredible.
Yes, it's ridiculous. They've consistently, when it was the Big Ten West, consistently out-recruited those teams without ever beating them, which is hard to do.
We may have, certainly not going to go championing another program, but nationally,
we might be a little too hard on James Franklin.
It appears to be that case.
Unless your argument is,
and I remember in my past life, I used to argue about this.
Yeah,
I'm like, I think it's just popular to hate on him.
He kind of comes off as somebody you don't want to like.
And in my former life, who I was working with is not a fan.
Yeah, which is, that's fine. He could be good at his job, you still don't like him.
But he wins.
Yeah. Now he does. He's about the only guy in history that's won at Vanderbilt. I
just think when you put it to actual,
what the actual wins are, what the talent he's brought in, it's hard. Now again,
the most surprising thing about that isn't the number of wins; it's where they've been recruiting.
Yes, and what the wins are as a consequence of that. If you want to get mad and say hey, if you're a Penn State fan, booster, whatever, and you say, hey, we need to recruit consistently in the top 10 because we want to be in the Ohio State, Michigan conversation, you can make that argument, and I don't have anything against. I can't go to you and say, oh, well, you can't expect that, right? But if you're just talking about wins and what he's done with the talent that he's got, I'm not sure how much you can complain there.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
I was stunned by that's what the recruiting rankings were.
Yeah, he's won over 9 games.
Yeah,
on average since 2016, and that included a 9-game season.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, a 9-game season, we're only won 4. You take 2020 out, which is what I kind of tend to do with most teams now, just because it was so weird.
Yeah, he's averaging 10 wins.
Yeah, which is, what more are you asking for anywhere?
I kind of get the whole. I get his demeanor too, because he will bristle.
Yeah.
So his personality is one I want to see this year. Lincoln Riley is another. And of course Lanning.
I do want to see Lanning up close.
Right, like that's because those are the guys that are infringing upon where James Franklin probably belongs in the proper pecking order.
Yeah.
Not the perception.
For sure. That'll be interesting to see. Coming up next, we've got plenty more college football stuff to dive into. It's Big Ten Media Days week. It's ACC Media Days week here.
Yeah, quietly.
Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to get involved with their goal of finding better treatments for childhood brain cancer and one day a cure. You can volunteer. You can donate right on the page. You can see what events they've got coming up. You can see what projects they're funding to see exactly where your efforts are being directed. All of that and more at teamjackfoundation.org. Speaking of a different type of Jack, Amazing Daniel chimes in on Twitter. He says,
I don't think his name is Jack. What are you referring to?
Oh, I must have misread. He says, Ravi thinks someone's overrated, but the numbers don't back him up. Let me pick my jaw up off the floor. Amazing Daniel. Just go ahead and point me to all those Bo Jackson 1,000-yard seasons, and we'll move right on. Okay, cool. Also remind me where he ranks between him and Jim Harbaugh on total career rushing yards, and we'll just let me know. Let me know where we're at. It's fine. Coming up next segment, we're going to talk.
I see that hasn't changed.
Well, nothing's changed. We're just out here. Make sure you stay tuned here. Coming up at 9, we've got Matt Hayes from Saturdays Down South. We're going to talk. Man, I'd like to talk about the ACC and SEC. I don't know if we'll get past the SEC.
I know it.
Because there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I did. Some of this stuff is fascinating because the Penn State thing was already kind of, I called them interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But when Sam posed it was kind of rhetorical because he's like, well, I have Oregon second. He's like, well, how did Penn State just automatically get past? And that just got me thinking. I'm like, I don't know. But I think it's how we feel or the perception of James Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
But in my head, I'm like, but even if it's that, it's still better than we think.
Yeah, the results have been better than we think.
So is it the Ohio State and Michigan thing? Because he was 7-2 back-to-back years in the conference. He went 8-1 once. I think that was 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is he supposed to win does Penn State want him to win the conference?
I mean, I'm sure in the last 8 years they would have liked to have won it once.
Okay, so if you're Penn State, do you feel as a program, and I'm going to get off Penn State here for a second. I'm just fascinated by myth versus reality as usual.
Sure.
Is there a program you do if you're at Penn State, do you feel like you should take a backseat to?
If you're Penn State, probably not.
Because I feel like we always slot them third.
If you're everybody else, you probably think that they're in a different pecking order. But if you're Penn State and you're like, this is who we are, you probably think we're on the same level as Michigan, Ohio State. You probably think as a program you're better than Oregon, if I had to guess. If you're like internally, they probably see themselves as a higher level football program than Oregon.
Can your fan base's expectation exceed that of your own of the program and you be a healthy?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Because if your fan base is constantly expecting one thing, you're constantly delivering something else, and that is okay with your administration, that's going to get toxic at some point.
That sounds like A&M.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the most toxic situations in all of college sports.
And we won't throw Nebraska into that discussion because we think administration is committed to meeting the expectation level. Or now because Coach Rule talks about the expectation
so I think there's
level.
Two things there with Nebraska. I think the fans' expectation level at one point probably was higher than the administration's expectation level. So probably maybe mid-2000s, like the end of Steve Peterson, that era into certainly into the Mike Riley hiring. Like, I don't think you hire Mike Riley if your expectation is the same thing as the fan base is, right?
Fair.
Like, and that's nothing against Mike Riley. That's just not who he is.
I get it.
Right?
I get it. I think people thought that was a lazy search.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was, hey, he's the opposite of Bo Pelini personality-wise.
It's a lazy search.
Yeah. So I think there has been times where it has been a situation in Nebraska where the fans' expectations outweighed the administration's expectations. And as we've seen, it's gotten toxic around here before. It has. right? I think we're finally at a place where the administration, the coaching staff, because I think it's not just the administration. I think there's times the coaching staff had lower expectations than the fan base has.
Yeah.
Now, I also think the fan base, at least in the short term, has adjusted their expectations because of what the program's been through. Like, the expectations today aren't the same as they were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Now, I think they're going to get back to that level, but I also think the administration has shown a commitment, whether it's ponying up to make sure they get Coach Rule, whether it's making sure they have state-of-the-art facilities across the board, whether it's trying to figure out what to do with Memorial Stadium. To me, all the things that making an official partnership with 1890, all the things that they've done point to me that's like, no, we believe that we can be a college football playoff contender. That's what they've said to me. But you're right. There are places where fan expectation, even where administration expectations are high, there's places where fan expectations exceed that. And if that exists for more than a certain amount of time, and I don't know how long that is, I think it's different every place.
It just has its breaking point.
It will become toxic. And we've seen that at Texas A&M. I think you see it in the SEC a lot. I think Auburn's that way. I think to a certain extent in previous staffs, I don't know that it is now. I think Ole Miss has been that way in the past. I don't know who South Carolina thinks they are. I don't. Like, I don't have a good gauge on who they think they are, but I could see that being a place where fan expectation outpaces administration expectation. I think it happens a lot of places, and most of the places you point to, you're like, yeah, it's not a healthy program.
I always look at, and Will asked a really good question about Penn State's strength of schedule.
Yeah, I didn't look it up.
So in the last 3 years, it's been 11, 12, and 13.
In conference?
Yes.
Yeah, so not great.
It's interesting.
So they got a little advantage there. But, again.
But I do think there's something to beating the teams that you think.
That's just what I was going to say.
Right?
Because that's something Nebraska hasn't been doing.
Yeah. I was a little surprised at Sam's take on Iowa, too, because I would love to be Iowa every day that ends in Y.
Yeah.
I just would.
So this is where I would love to have Iowa's results. Personally, I would like it to look differently just because I like watching different types of football than that. But listen, I would trade the wins for the aesthetics if that's what it comes down to.
Every day that ends in Y.
So
that was going to be my.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I was going to send you the GIF, the GIF of GIF from
like,
Coach Rule
like
of the
Gifford.
Yes. Of the mic drop.
Yeah.
Because I would trade aesthetics
100%
for results every single day.
I totally get it. I do.
And I'm like, okay.
And I don't know.
So that narrative is going to change, though. And I'll just use Iowa for the sake of the discussion, just because Sam did about getting blown out in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Is that easier to stomach without the divisions?
Getting to the Big Ten championship game and losing?
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
Because it's a bigger accomplishment.
So that's pretty much going to go out the window.
Because what we would look at is like, oh, well, they want to crapped it, Big Ten West. They clearly weren't in that. Yeah. But if you now get to the Big Ten championship, there's no excuse.
Right.
And even if you
not no excuse. There's no narrative.
Yes. There's no narrative that you weren't good enough, that you shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right.
Right. Because you look at previous years and like, well, if Michigan was in a different division.
Well, we did it with Northwestern.
100%.
We did it with Purdue. We did it with
basically
Iowa,
every representative of the Big Ten West, if we're being honest. But I also, so I don't know how much you were able to listen to last week. I know you were busy, but I came around on your Iowa take a little bit in like, why can't Nebraska just be Iowa, right? And I think the specifics in the way that they do it is really challenging. Like, I think it's harder than maybe, at least my perception of how you've presented the argument. But what I do think is crucial here, and I talked about this with margin of error, right? So, like, the margin of error can be thin if you win the right situations, right? I was talking about with the tennis guys, right? How there's like a percentage point or two between the top guys
staving off break point
and average
capitalizing
guys, right?
on break point.
If you win the right plays, That's how Nebraska can be Iowa in my mind, right? Win the high leverage situations. And you may only be 4% better than every team you play, but Iowa's 4% better than teams they play, and they end up winning 10 games because they win the right 4%.
Now, I also think this, though, and this stems from the conversation 15 minutes ago. You know why else I think Iowa functions at a high level?
What's that?
Because I think the fan expectation level is as close to or on par
with administration.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't consider that. I look at that as a fairly healthy.
I think the closer they are, the healthier your program, and usually the offspring of that is your identity forms, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So then you can recruit to it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's dead on.
Right? Like,
yeah, I think that's dead on.
And I just look at the programs that who appear to have matching, like they're just got this symbiotic thing going. They just have the longest long-term. They just have the
they have the consistency.
Consistency.
They have the longest stretches of consistently winning programs. Whereas, whether you've got like a Tennessee is a good example. That's been a volatile program for the last 25 years.
That's why I love the fact that the staff actually says for once we're a developmental program.
Yeah.
Because not that it comes with a certain number of wins and losses, but at least we know what it's supposed to look like and how patient
along the way.
How it's supposed to be along the way.
Because what I like is not only have they said they're a developmental program, they've also said we're going to win at the highest level.
Yeah.
You say both, and I think the fan base can get on board. Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lulla. That's TV. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Matt Hayes of Saturday Down South. What's up, Matt?
Morning, fellas. How are you?
Good. Hanging in there, man. Did you recover from the whirlwind known as SEC Media Days? That was I didn't know if it was a celebration of new conference members, a celebration of the conference. It felt like a ticker tape parade.
It was a lot of fun. Other than the fact that I got caught up in that whole computer glitch with the airline, so I basically didn't sleep for 37 hours. But other than that, it was good. All good.
37 hours. That's incredible.
Who needs to sleep? That's
my motto.
Matt, let's start with the SEC here, because for all of the celebrating that was done of the conference and its members in general, a team that I think maybe kind of slid under the radar a little bit, which considering its head coach is kind of unusual, was Ole Miss. With everything else going on and the team they're bringing in, it didn't seem like they got a ton of run nationally.
I think the problem, honestly, guys, is when you think of Lane Kiffin, you think of the guy who was fired on the tarmac at USC. And you think of the guy who really hasn't had that good of a public image in his career. But this is a dude he's on it right now, man. He is on it. He's got a team where he wants it. He's living life really well. He loves Oxford. He's doing great right now, both professionally and personally. Doesn't drink anymore. He looks fantastic. Looks like he's 34 years old. It's almost like he started his career now. Like now is the time he should have started, and he's just taking off. That team's ascending. He's ascending as a head coach. He's a guy that Ole Miss does what we all think they could, and that's make the playoff and maybe even win a game or two in the playoffs. He's going to be a hot commodity at the end of the season. Not that he wasn't even a season before, but I think he's a lot different than what people see him as, because I think the majority of the people see him as the guy that just got fired on the tarmac at USC and the guy that left Tennessee after a year.
It's interesting because he famously last week, embraced that when he called out Feinbaum in terms of addressing it and how it motivated him and whatever, right? He used it as a catalyst as opposed to a death sentence. But part of that is kind of where he is. How much do you feel like being in Oxford and kind of the situation he's in where he's like the man is the perfect fit, right? Like the cautionary tale is be careful of your environment, I guess, is if we were talking about Kiffin. How much should he be cognizant of where he is and how he's been able to flourish in that environment?
Well, I think Oxford has been good for him. I think him getting comfortable with who he is personally, not so much professionally, has helped him more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see him as a guy right now who's in a really good headspace, knows what he wants and what he needs off the field. And, as we've heard from every single coach at every single level of football, the way you live off the field directly translates to success on the field. And he's crushing both right now. And I'm not sure, I guess long story short, I'm not sure it's about Oxford as much as it is about he's got his life in order right now. He feels good about who he is, what his life is, and his family. And he's on a roll right now, man.
We're talking with Matt Hayes of Saturday Down South. Matt, what was, was there anything from SEC Media Days that left a particularly large impression on you? I mean, there was a ton going on. You got new conference members. You got one of the couple marquee programs breaking in a new head coach in Alabama. Like, what was something that really stuck with you?
Well, I think to me that the overarching theme, which is just strange to me, there are a lot of people who just believe Alabama's going to go away, and I just okay. First off, we start off with players win games. We all know that players win games, and Alabama probably has. It's not probably. They have a top 3 roster in college football. Okay, Nick Saban goes. You lose the greatest coach in college football history, I mean, you gain a guy who's won 104 to 114, I think it is, 113 career times he's been on the field coaching. You got to be kidding me. Any other time at any other program, the hiring of Kalen DeBoer would be seen as a coup for any other program. Now it just comes with questions because it's Nick Saban. He's following Nick Saban. I think you got to look at what Kalen DeBoer has done as far as developing quarterbacks to get beyond there. That's the most important position on the field. It's everything in football at any level. And you see what he's done, place after place he's been, specifically at Washington, what he did with Michael Penix, who was a talented but certainly erratic quarterback at Indiana. You guys know that. You saw him in the Big Ten there. He works with him in 2 years in Washington. He becomes a first-round pick. Can he do that same type of work with Jalen Miller? That's the question. But if he does, I mean, Alabama can win the national championship. They're that talented, and they were there in the playoffs last year anyway. So yeah, it kind of blows me away that people are just overlooking Alabama right now.
So let me go back to something here, Matt, because I said something to Ravi during the break because he's a big Kalen DeBoer guy, and I said it may be unfair to on a linear scale use his success at Bama relative to being at Washington because of the conference change. The SEC fan base in the national media will hear none of that discussion, though, will we? The Bama standard is the Bama standard because it is relative to what DeBoer's has been.
I think you make a point, but I will also say, I mean, obviously the Pac-12 is not the SEC,
yeah.
But you're also talking about a guy who, I mean, what was his record in the Pac-12? He was 13-1 and 11-2.
Yeah,
he's not bad. Okay, that is bad. And he's already proven he can recruit. You know,
it's incredible.
You know, one month class with this past season, they still got a top 10 class. Right now, they're number 2 or number 1. You know, and we're 4 months into this class. Yeah, I just see this. It's strange to me when people do this. They think, okay, well, Nick's gone, and that's it. But Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach. Again, if it's let's just say Nebraska was looking for a coach, and Nebraska hired Kalen DeBoer, it would be a home run hire. If Texas was looking for a coach and hired Kalen DeBoer, it would be a home run hire. Oklahoma, Ohio State, all of them would be a home run hire. But I think that Alabama comes with a little hesitation and a little pause, if only because he's replacing, the greatest coach in the history of college football. So yeah, I look at this thing as this thing's going to take off, man.
So let me go to fast forward to a team you just mentioned in Texas. I thought Sark had really good command in his individual interviews. He had this sense of self-awareness where he was reflecting on. Now, granted, the conversation stemmed from being able to work with guys like Saban and Pete Carroll, but how he's matured as well and gotten better with age, kind of similar to Lane Kiffin. How important do you think it was for him settling in and his personal life to take on that monster known as Texas? Because he almost didn't turn the corner.
And we've seen that job eat people up.
Yeah, he almost didn't turn the corner in Austin either.
Yeah, huge. I mean,
right?
He and Lane are very similar, where they had it all a lot so soon with Pete Carroll there, and they were the golden child under Pete Carroll, and they all got the job. They got the job they wanted, and kind of didn't work at Washington for Sark, but he still got the USC job. And then his personal demons led to him being fired from USC. He did the same remake at Alabama as Kiffin. It's very similar trajectories. And yeah, I think it's certainly another case of living well off the field, translating to, performing well, executing on the field. But I will say this, and this is what's strange to me about it. The same people who are saying, I don't know about Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, are the same people who think that Texas is going to win the SEC.
Oh.
And I'm blown away by that. I think Texas and Oklahoma are going to have a difficult process, if only because in that league, you better play at a high level every single week, no matter where you go, with the exception of maybe one or two places, like Vanderbilt, and maybe only Vanderbilt, actually. Because when you go on the road in that league, and if you don't play at a high level, and the other team does, the home team does, which is typically what happens, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. And if it's different, the environment The ability to win on the road, man, I've heard so many coaches in the league say, look, if I win 9-6 on the road in this league, I'm very happy. I don't care. Just get out and get the win. And that's, I think, what Texas and Oklahoma have to understand. There's no Lawrences in this. There's no Lawrence or even Manhattan. I know Manhattan gets crazy too at home for home games, but it's a different vibe, a different level of intensity when you throw that level of intensity along with a defensive lineman. And at the end of the day, that's the difference between the SEC and other conferences, is the defensive lineman and the offensive lineman for that matter. It's a line of scrimmage game. It's a line of scrimmage league. If you are not ready week by week on the road, the line of scrimmage will eat you up. And to me, that's where Texas and Oklahoma have to understand and the transition of going to this league and winning in this league. And I just don't get the whole idea. Well, Texas is going to go in there and roll that league. I mean, it's going to be difficult. And they have 3 really good home games. But believe me, home games aren't that easy either, because if you're an elite team and you're going on the road, you love going on the road in that league. That's like, it's like an extra course meal for you.
Matt, I'm curious. You talked a lot about Texas there, and not as many people are high on Oklahoma coming into the league for obvious reasons, just the seasons they're coming off of. Where do you think the kind of on the field Oklahoma's going to have the most challenges? Because I think you look at Texas's roster and you go, hey, that's a talented football team, but you mentioned the grind and going on the road, stuff like that. Where do you think Oklahoma's going to struggle from a football standpoint?
I don't know if it's going to be a struggle. I think the question is, and by the way, I'm with you. I don't know why it's all about Texas when Oklahoma's brains out of Texas for the last decade.
Their skill is outstanding too.
Yeah, I think the question for Oklahoma is Jackson Arnold. I mean, what does he become? Does he become the typical Oklahoma quarterback? If he's the guy that threw interceptions in the bowl games against Arizona, that's going to be a problem. Now, he's a young guy, so he's going to develop, obviously. If he becomes this guy that throws 35 touchdowns and gets 7 interceptions, they're going to be right there at the end. They're going to be a playoff team. They have that kind of talent. That to me is the question. It's the quarterback. It's always the quarterback. It's a vertical passing sport right now. College football, NFL, even high schools are going toward that. So it's all about the quarterback and what he can do and how he can put you in position to score points and keep you away from those game-turning mistakes. It's no different than with Nebraska. I mean, it's all about Dylan Raiola. We can talk all we want about how Matt's done a great job defensively, which he has. He's done a great job on the lines of scrimmage, which he has. If Dylan Raiola doesn't play well, they're still a 6-16. They're still a 6-6 or 5-17.
And when's the last time? So, full disclosure, we've talked for 13 minutes. We haven't once brought up Georgia, which is interesting considering their past success. And they're coming off a little bit of a maligned quarterback. I'm saying that a little tongue-in-cheek, but not really. Threw for almost 4K, and he was 24-6 touchdowns to interceptions ratio. The NFL scouts love him, but does the fan base in Athens love him enough to not have it be the but, or if we get from, when you talk about Carson Beck in Georgia?
Well, he's going to be the first pick of the draft. I don't have any question about that, unless something crazy happens, he gets hurt or something. NFL scouts love this kid. He's got a terrific arm. He's athletic. He is your prototypical pro-style quarterback. He's everything you want in a quarterback. Now, I will say this: last year was his first year as a starter.
Yeah.
The problem is this is a cat who 2 years ago everyone was expecting to jump in for JT Daniels, and JT Daniels got hurt and just take it and run with it. And he was the projected starter that week of game week in week 2 after JT Daniels got hurt against Clemson. He was the projected starter in week 2. He was going through practice during the week, had 4 week of practice, so Kirby Smart decided he's going to stick with Stetson Bennett because Stetson Bennett played the previous year as a backup and played well at times.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't want to screw around with it. We all know what happened then. Stetson took it. They went back-to-back national titles. That very easily could have been Carson Beck had he had the strong practice week against and the UAB week. So I think Georgia fans, I think they're very excited about what could be this week. But I think also some of them think, all right, this could have been a while ago. But they don't care because they've got the 2 titles, obviously. But I think if you look at Carson Beck and Georgia for that matter. Georgia's got the most talent in the country. They've got right now the best quarterback in the country. I don't know how you don't put 1 and 1 together into 2. And then they've got the best coach in the country. So throw that in there too. To me, the only way Georgia doesn't win this thing this year is if there's a key injury here or there, if Carson Beck gets injured or doesn't play well. I don't see anyone beat Georgia, including Ohio State, because I am not a fan of I'm not a fan of Will Howard. I think Will did nice things at Kansas State. You're talking about a completely different story now when you get into the Big Ten and you're playing at Ohio State where everybody's giving you the best shot week after week.
Let me ask you something, Matt, because and maybe it's just me, and you could say so. You could be like, DB, I think that's just you. Carson Beck is interesting because he doesn't feel like a guy whose NFL projection meets what we feel like we see when we watch him play. Is there a disconnect there?
Well, I would say that last year was his first year starter. You got to remember that.
No, for sure.
I think, and any coach will tell you at any level, the guy's biggest growth is from year 1 to year 2 as a starter. I mean, I will say if it didn't look right to you, if it didn't look like an elite quarterback to you, watch this year, because they specifically, when he was deciding whether to leave or stay, and he probably would have been a top 10, top 12 pick this year, when he was deciding whether to leave or stay, the staff there promised him, we're going to get receivers, we're going to go into the portal, get receivers, we're going to recruit guys to help you, we're going to put pieces around you to help you, which is what they've done. They're going to throw the heck out of the ball. I mean, we've thought about how Georgia's always been what Alabama was in the early years of Saban, where they'd run the ball, throw off play action, throw over the top, and kill you. They're going to throw the ball. They will throw the ball a lot more than you think this year.
Matt, let me ask you this about Georgia, because I keep waiting with all, and I know they recruited at an incredibly high level. And I know Kirby Smart's an incredible coach at getting those guys on the field and productive. At some point, does it ever matter how many first rounders they lose? Because we're like year after year after, like, is there any point where it's like, oh, there's a little blip here because they've lost 30 first rounders in the last 3 years? Or was last year the blip because they just didn't win a national title?
It's amazing that we're talking about a blip when literally like 3 plays cost them winning the SEC.
I know.
Yep.
And frankly, let's be honest here, literally a playoff selection committee didn't put them in there when they were easily one of the 4 best teams in the country. But they were left out.
No question.
So, and they've lost 1 time in the last 30 or 31 games, I should say, once. And we're picking at them. I agree with you. I look at it the same way. I think it's just an unbelievable nod to what they do and how they develop players. I mean, clearly they recruit at an elite level. You can't win a national championship unless you recruit at a top 5 level, or now these days unless you get just mega stars from the transfer portal, which Florida State and Ole Miss have done. And by the way, I think if George Travis stays healthy, Florida State could have won it all last year. But I would just say the way they develop players, the way they keep those guys happy and invested in the game, in the team concept week after week. You're talking about elite players that are sitting and watching. It's like Pete Carroll used to do at USC. It's like Nick did at Alabama for so long. You got guys that should be starting elsewhere. They're content to play special teams and be backups until it's their time. I mean, you've got to go in there when you can do that, when you can convince kids to do that.
I think he's a top 10 coach in the country, and they get Oklahoma at home, they get Bama at home, they get Ole Miss at home, and they got the toughie with SC to start this thing. But what's LSU do post Daniels with? I get it with Nussmeier and this quarterbacking kind of this transition, but Kelly's really, really good. Where does LSU belong this year in this discussion?
Well, I mean, Brian Kelly really right out of the gate, day one, was talking about, got everybody sideways, talking about how he thinks the offense will be as good or better than last year.
Yeah, like right off. Yeah.
That statement. I mean, let's be honest. Jaden, the season Jaden Daniels had last year was one of the top 3 in the last quarter century.
Yep.
You could easily make that argument. Okay. I mean, I was shocked by it. And I think Nussmeier is a good player. I don't know that.
He's career 11-7, right? It's like they got a long way to go.
He's not going to rush for 1,000 yards. That's number one. Okay? He's not going to stretch defenses like Jaden Daniels did. So then you have to say, well, why would he say that? Then he must be a thrower, like an elite thrower, and he must like their skill at receiver. Clearly, they've got skill at running backs. They've got a terrific offensive line, probably the best offensive line, not only in the SEC, but one of the best in the country. So he must think like they're just going to line up and they'll do whatever they want.
So, Matt, let me switch gears on you here real quick to the team that beat LSU to the start of the season. How much of ACC Media Days, which are also kicking off this week, are going to be dominated by the elephant in the room of Florida State and Clemson trying to get the heck out of Dodge?
That's sad.
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah. I don't know how else to say it. All of it. And you try and avoid it. I'm sure they want to avoid it, but it's there. The players are going to have to talk about it. Coaches are going to have to talk about it. It's an interesting situation. I'm telling you, I've talked to many people in the Big Ten, many industry sources, and it's not this fait accompli that everybody thinks it is. Okay, I'll tell you that right now. Florida State going to the Big Ten. It's just not. In fact, if I had to put odds on it, I'd put very, very slim. The only way that happens is if the ACC completely implodes, and it's no longer a viable conference. Then the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have to do something as far as those 4 or 5 teams that are worthy. But other than that, Florida State, the way they've gone about it, the way they've sued the ACC, the way they've sued the television partners to get the television deal, to make it public. They've as one Big Ten AD said to me, they've proven themselves to be not a reliable partner. So then the problem becomes, do you really want to add this program, this university, into your conference when they're not a good partner? And I just don't see it. And not only that, it's you've got to get the money from your television partner. You've got to again reassess how you schedule things, how you reconfigure the league. Is it a one division? Is it pod? It's a completely different ordeal when you start adding more teams. And I think both the SEC and the Big Ten now are at that point where, wait a second, we might be at full tilt right now.
Let me get your eye on this. Does the ACC have the best kept quarterback secret in the country in Haynes King?
Let me say this, okay? I've been saying that for like the last 4 or 5 months, that because down here in Florida, we're close to Florida State, so Florida State we've got a lot of Florida State fans in Jacksonville. I've been saying this on my radio show for 4 or 5 months that season opener in week 0 in Ireland is going to be a grinder for Florida State because Haynes King, man, that dude, 37 total touchdowns last year, and nobody knows about this cat because he was part of the Jimbo nonsense at Texas A&M. It never worked for him. He got injured. He got benched. He's a starter again. He got benched again. He's a talented dude, man, a talented guy, and that's going to be a difficult game for Florida State because not only is it the first game of the season, it's also the first game with DJ Uyunglele. And yes, he played well at Oregon State. He did not play well in the ACC. So which DJU are you getting? If they're getting the ACC DJU, that's going to be a problem. That game in Ireland is going to be a big problem for them.
They're going to have their hands full with Haynes too, running the rock. That's a good rushing offense.
Oh yeah.
That's Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South. Matt, we appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Okay, fellas, my pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.
That's Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South. Good stuff from him. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio right here at AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're brought to you by our friends at Union Omaha. They've got a match coming up on Saturday against Chattanooga. Make sure you get out to Warner Park at 7 p.m. for that one. And, of course, got to go to unionomaha.com to get your tickets, view the upcoming schedule, maybe even buy a little bit of merch, or if you're just curious what's going on with the team, check out all the news and community events they've got going on over at unionomaha.com. You asked something just before we came back on the air, DB, and you go, does the ACC have any on-field storylines? And the best I could come up with was maybe Miami.
And that's if you believe.
Yeah, or if you're a hater and you're like, are they gonna, right?
Yeah, because they have some fellas now.
They do. Mario Cristobal is going to get fellas.
Good.
And he has.
They're good up front.
And they got Cam Ward from Washington State, formerly of Incarnate Word fame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good pull.
But that's all I could come up with. I mean, like, I like Florida State, so I'm wondering, like, okay, what is, I look at like DJU, right? And I go, okay, how good is Florida State if he's who he's always been, right? Or at least the last couple of years. Because I mean, I know Matt said that, he was better last year than he was at Clemson. His last year at Clemson and last year at Oregon State were almost identical, like 22-7. His completion at touchdown interception at Clemson, 21-7 at Oregon State. A little bit better completion percentage at Clemson. He was at like 62. He was at like 57 at Oregon State. Yards, high 2000s both times. He actually rushed more at Clemson and was more productive on the ground. If he's who he's always been, because I think that's just who he is, right? We're 5 years into this thing with DJU at this point. I think it's ridiculous to expect him to suddenly be a different person. If he is what he always is, what's Florida State?
I mean, I still think that's a team they're 9 wins.
At least, probably, yeah.
It's so funny how casually you say that. Really?
I trust Norvell, and I don't think the ACC is very good.
Okay.
So that's where I go with the at least. And, we talked off air. I think their defense is going to be really good again. I think Norvell's really good at scheming the running game as well. They didn't do it as much last year because of how good Jordan Travis was. But that's what –
I mean, you did have one of the more underappreciated backs.
Trey Benson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really good.
He's going to be a good pro, too.
I trust his ability to kind of scheme the running game and figure that out. So I don't think 9 wins in the ACC if you're Florida State is a stretch.
Yeah, I think their season win total is 9.5.
Yeah.
But it's shaded to the under.
Yeah. I think if they get less than 9, something went wrong.
Actually, it's not. It's plus 130 to take the under, so it's shaded to the over a little.
Yeah. I think I look at that team, that schedule, and I go, okay, and the conference, really, like, if you're putting Florida State in the SEC this year, I feel very differently. Or if you put them in the Big Ten this year, I feel very differently. But in that conference with their schedule and the team they put together, I look at it and go, yeah, if they get less than 9, something bad probably happened.
You like anybody that's not in the Power Fours?
I mean,
obviously Liberty.
Yeah, I'm a huge Chadwell guy.
God, I kind of like Memphis.
That's interesting. And Florida State gets Memphis this year.
And I told B. Edwards.
Yeah.
I said that Memphis game is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Memphis won 10 last year.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good.
I think a lot of people are defaulting to Boise State.
Yeah. Now, they have some high-end talent.
Yes.
It's Coach Chin's.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting that defense.
It's our guy.
Yeah. I like Chinander.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't necessarily being sarcastic. I think he kind of, he got scapegoated a little in that last year there. But, I mean, he put together a really good defense for Nebraska at one point in his time here. So I got nothing against Coach Chin's. But, I don't sit here and, like, there's nobody I'm enamored with out of the group of 5 schools. I don't,
I was trying to talk to Greg. They're not going. He's not going to Big Ten media days, but there's usually a couple of dark horses within the power conferences that could be better than people think. You have any of the? I kind of look at. I can't really call them a dark horse.
Okay,
but I do think they're flying under the radar within their own conference.
Who's that?
And I've talked about them before. They're in the Big 12.
K-State.
Kansas.
Yeah,
I think people like K-State, and they do. They openly like K-State.
Okay,
I don't know how many people openly like Kansas.
I
kind of do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a huge Leipold guy, and
I like their schedule.
To me, it's all about the health of Daniels. Like, that's my only.
Sometimes I'm really good at this. Sometimes I may pick Texas Tech a couple years ago because of their schedule, and they're not very good.
It's all right. I picked Utah last year, and Cam Rising never played it down.
Well, so I don't hold you.
I thought he was going to play.
I don't hold.
I thought Cam Rising was going to play. Which, if you want to talk about sleepers, like I'll throw Utah back in there again. Because I
do think they're the favorite in their conference.
They are, but I don't think people are.
It's them and K-State.
But I don't think people are talking about them as like. I mean, I guess if they win their conference, they're going to the playoff. So that's fair. So somebody asked me this question.
I'm not so sure that's a place you'd love to go play either. If they
Utah?
host. Yeah.
No. Somebody asked me this question over the weekend about who I thought was making the playoff. And a team that I landed on, and it was kind of by default because when I've said these things about this team, I didn't think of it in the context of making a playoff. But if Iowa is who I think they are, they're going to be in the playoff. Like if they're who I think they are, that they're in the playoff.
So that means you have to have Iowa probably playing in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I've got them at 10-2 minimum. I think they could easily go 11-1. But I think I've got them at 10-2, which I think 10-2 in the Big Ten get you in.
I would love to say you're right, but it may not.
Just because of its Iowa and how it looks, or what?
Well, I think you certainly could have 3, if not 4 teams from the SEC.
I think you're going to get 3 from each the SEC and the Big Ten, and you're going to get 1 more from one of those conferences.
Okay,
I don't know which.
Plus Notre Dame.
If Riley Leonard's healthy, yes.
Although I looked at him, I had this somebody posted like expectation levels for Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we talk about quarterback plays and touchdowns, interceptions, and somebody was kind of intimating they would love to see 4-1 TDs to interceptions for Raiola, and
that's aggressive.
No, it would be incredible.
Yeah, I mean that's unreal.
And one of the guys that I used that is highly thought of that doesn't have a 4-1 touchdown interception ratio is Riley Leonard.
Mm-hmm. For his career, doesn't have that.
No,
or in any individual season, doesn't have that.
Like, and there's only a handful of guys that are playing at that high end level.
Also, can we talk about like Riley Leonard's sample size at Duke?
Oh, I understand.
Like, yes, if he's healthy, he's probably pretty good, but he hasn't been healthy a lot. And his best season is under 3,000 yards passing. It's a 20-6 touchdown interception rate, which is good. You'll take that, right? But it's not a crazy amount of touchdown passes. Just 64% completion percentage. Now he did rush for almost 700 yards and 13 touchdowns, right? So that's part of the equation there. But we're making a lot of assumptions about Riley Leonard.
Yeah, and I just think 4-1 is tough, right? I mean, Milroe wasn't 4-1.
No.
Quinn Ewers isn't 4-1.
Almost no one is 4-1.
Jackson Dart isn't 4-1. Cam Ward isn't 4-1.
If you told me
Brady Cook at Missouri isn't 4-1.
If you told me I got 2.5-1 for Dylan Raiola,
2.5-1, I would
ecstatic.
Listen, 25-10
over the moon.
I'd be and plus, yeah, I'm gonna say this out loud. If he goes 25-10 this year,
yeah. Just wait. Just wait.
You asked me if I've allowed myself to think like if he's really good.
Yeah.
He goes 25-10. He's gonna be.
I'll be honest. If you get straight up, you give me 2-1 this year, I'm happy.
Me too.
Because if he's 2-1 this year, that's 8 wins. I promise. If Dylan Raiola is 2-1 touchdown interception,
so 20-10.
I will put it. I will bet whatever you want to bet.
22-11.
If 24-12, whatever the number is, right? If you tell me Dylan Raiola is 2-1 touchdown interception ratio this year, and it's over say it's over 15 touchdowns, so like we have a sample size here, 8 wins guaranteed. I will guarantee you 8 wins. You pick the place you want to go eat if you want to bet against that.
I like it.
I will mark it down. Shane, clip that out so he can be thrown at me if I'm wrong. Because there's no way if he plays the most of the season and goes 2-1 touchdown interception, there's no way they lose less than 10.
Had somebody tell me how good he looked. Seen him over the weekend. Fan. Yeah, he looks fantastic. He's a big, strong, sturdy dude.
He looked pretty good. Yeah. We'll wrap up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio as we wrap up the show here on a Monday. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. And the rest of the week, we will, well, at least Tuesday, Wednesday. No, we'll be here tomorrow. I have no idea what day it is.
Yeah, we'll be here tomorrow. We're in Indy
Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'll be gone Friday. So DB will be having to find a buddy to hang out with. Somebody. Maybe not a buddy, just a person.
Yeah, let's not.
Let's not throw buddy around all willy-nilly.
Yeah, right. I'll just keep that. Yeah.
So we'll have, we'll be live from Indy. So we'll have some good content for you. Bringing some of the crew out, so that'll be a good time. But okay, so I don't know if I was going to bring this up or not, but I'm going to, because we were talking about Dylan in the last segment, and I read an article yesterday.
You're just waiting to gush?
No, well, maybe. I read an article yesterday on Husker Max, and I'm reading through it, and the article is basically trying to make a case for Heinrich Harburg starting the season as the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And before I comment, I want to ask you first to see if I'm, just out here being crazy.
No, you got to stand on business regardless of what I think.
Well, I'm just curious what you think.
So if you'd have asked me this in January,
you'd have said, yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I said I would have thought about it.
Yeah.
Because remember, we gave all the scenarios.
Hmm?
We had some fantastic stuff early, especially like it could be this if this, and then what are the pros and cons of the slow elevation versus this, and
it's easier to bench
pull a guy.
Harburg than it is to bench Raiola.
Right. So yeah, if this was February, sure. In June or July or August,
late July,
no,
not a chance.
Not a chance.
Is there any? Do you still see any potential value to that scenario?
No, because players know.
Yeah.
You can't
just throw a guy out there.
So what would be how would the coaches sell that to the players? Would they say, "Hey,
it's a fair question"?
If they said, "Hey,
experience. This guy's won some games for us last year."
Yeah,
but you can see it.
I don't see how you could make that happen.
Because you can see it in practice, right? You just are there, you're watching it, you know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's the only thing. So this is the only thing I could maybe compare it to, and I'm not doing this because it's this particular guy I'm not trying to compare these two guys.
Which means there's going to be some sort of a comparison. Why would you use them if you're not going to compare them?
I'm comparing scenarios, not players. Okay?
Scenarios. Okay.
Oops, my bad. That's my scenario.
Wow, deep pull.
So in Kansas City, when Patrick Mahomes was a rookie, do you think the players knew he was better than Alex Smith?
I don't know, because Alex Smith was coming off. What was
he was good? Yeah, Alex Smith was good.
Or something like.
Alex Smith was good.
Alex Smith was good.
Alex Smith was better in this scenario than Heinrich Harburg was in our scenario.
Yeah,
but I wonder if, just physically, and you watch it happen, I'd have a hard.
No, because those guys know. No, I don't think it's the same.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't, because I think
because you've won a lot with Alex Smith.
Yeah, and based on where the offenses were relative to each team,
fair.
I think is the disqualifier.
Because the argument that was made,
Alex Smith was
good. I'm an Alex Smith guy. I really appreciate him, and I always felt like he had one of the worst scenarios to start his career in San Francisco with.
And I think in the NFL, you're more apt to say this guy's gonna be good.
Yeah.
In college,
you're like, this guy's good right now.
Yeah. Because they don't play the waiting game in college if you're going to be good,
yes.
Not at the quarterback spot.
So,
although Georgia got away with it,
they did, but I don't
see people. I'm glad Matt gave it context, because I don't think Georgia's fan base is all in on Carson Beck.
I don't either.
As the NFL is.
Yeah, as the guy that can get them back to the national championship.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because remember.
But they also weren't in on Stetson Bennett year one either.
People kind of dogged their offense last year.
Yeah. It was pretty good still.
This guy's pretty good.
Yeah. Carson Beck is good.
He's going to throw. I thought at that time, he's going to throw for 4K.
Yeah. I look at Carson Beck and just physically. Now, Stetson Bennett has a bunch of other stuff that matters at a quarterback spot, right? Whether it's the leadership, whether it's the toughness, whether just people believe in him, whatever, right? But if you're just looking at physically, Carson Beck's better than Stetson Bennett. I don't think there's a question about that. So it's really hard for me to listen to Georgia fans who also didn't want Stetson Bennett, by the way. Let's not pretend like that was a thing that they were clamoring for.
I just think there's a lot of those guys. I think Nussmeier is one of those guys. He didn't show me a ton. He's going to have to take a big leap, and obviously you can.
Yeah.
Remember, he's an 11-7 guy, and we're pretty geeked, and I wouldn't have even thought about him.
Yeah,
except for Kelly's comments that
went hard on it. Yeah, he went hard on Nussmeier.
Now they do have elite wide receivers, and they just got a verbal from another.
And he's a high end offensive mind. I get his confidence in looking at a guy and be like, oh yeah, I can make this offense work with him. I get that, but I also think, and we're talking about this with Riley Leonard. We're talking about this with, I've talked about it some with Will Howard at Ohio State. And
I'll be curious to see Cook's evolution in Missouri.
At Missouri, yeah. But we look at these guys and our perception.
Quinn Ewers at Texas.
Quinn's a guy too, because last year he was in the exact same spot as a Nussmeier, right? Where he really hadn't done anything. And they're like, oh, but we got Quinn Ewers. And it's like, what does that mean today? Right now it means something different. But a year ago, having Quinn Ewers didn't mean that much. Right? There was some, well, is Arch Manning even any good if he can't beat out Quinn Ewers? That was the conversation. Not, oh, Quinn Ewers is so great, Arch Manning's going to have to wait his turn.
Right.
And that was the conversation with Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. Oh, how good can Carson Beck possibly be if he can't beat out Stetson Bennett?
The funny thing about Arch Manning is I think the more people saw him, the less they were enamored with him.
Yeah, I think that's still true.
And they wondered, well, best case scenario, Ewers balls out and he's one and done, and then Arch can step in. Now that this year's happened, it's like,
thank God that Quinn Ewers came back.
Yep. That's kind of how it feels.
Yeah. Because
there's just a lot of those quarterbacks that I think have those. Arnold's another one at Oklahoma.
Yeah. They've got these kind of career trajectories, right? Whether it's because where they come in as a recruit.
About Fafita at Arizona. Everybody thought was going to jump ship.
Yeah. I don't even know what to do with Arizona, if I'm being totally honest.
I don't know, but he's nice.
He is, but that team, I think, might have some problems. They lost.
Yeah, they had some. Yeah, they
lost a lot.
That wide receiving core was outstanding. I'm looking for a couple of dark horses, and considering I probably won't leave my hotel room much after 5:30 or whenever we get a makeshift dinner, I'm gonna be reading the heck out of article. I'm gonna formulate.
You can get your sleepers down.
Yep.
You're not gonna go hang out at St. Elmo's with me.
No. No.
I heard you like being out in public.
Although your guy, he did ask us. He did extend an invite.
Let's go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on now.
I don't know if we'll be there enough time.
What on Tuesday?
They're down a day early. And we did have a good dinner last year.
Are you guys going?
I mean, we could, always do a little nightcap.
He paid for it, so it was, or Trev did, so it was perfectly fine. Although I'm not going to say, like, St. Elmo's isn't, it's not over, it's a little overrated.
I'm glad I've gone. I'm glad I went, but I didn't go there and be like, oh, this is the best place I've ever been.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was fine.
But it's got, the reputation is outshines kind of the.
I get it, the shrimp cocktail.
You don't strike me as a shrimp cocktail guy.
I love it.
Really?
But I don't order it a ton.
Yeah.
That
sauce was spicy.
I would put that on just about, I'd put that on grilled cheese. But I'm a big horseradish guy.
Yeah. I got you.
And I can make my own at home too. So I'm a big horseradish guy.
I'm a big anywhere they come by and like wipe the crumbs off your table. That's my vibe.
Yeah, I remember we were there. So this was early one time at Big Ten Media Days. And I asked Bish if he was going to eat the rest of his meal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mercifully chastised. And then I didn't end up doing it, so he just kind of wasted the.
He touched it. He touched it.
Ate off another grown man's plate, and I was like, "Yeah, he did use his fork. I'm probably cool, but man, it looked legit."
Don't need to waste that.
Never ever.
Kind of what I was thinking.
Can't just go out there and waste stuff. What are we doing?
Yeah, I ate off Ryan's plate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you do that?
Because it was an untouched piece of meat, and I don't think he thought it was a good piece of meat, but it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know.
I mean, listen, I appreciate the security to ask questions that other people wouldn't ask.
Hey, you gonna eat that?
It's your own question.
Hey, bud, you gonna finish that?
Oh yeah. I follow a guy on TikTok who has the top 38 places to eat in Indianapolis.
Oh yeah. What do we get? We get.
I don't know. I haven't
gonna give us some recs.
I haven't sat down because for whatever the reason that he doesn't do them I haven't watched them in order.
Because
so I have to go back to the account and just kind of watch it.
The time we'll have is Wednesday night. That's the time we'll have to go eat.
Yeah, I know. Other than that, it's like
Tuesday we'll have to do something late.
We're by a White Castle. In case you're wondering.
You want to
and a Jack in the Box.
You want to hit that up on Tuesday night?
I'm not eating. No, but it's. And plus, by the time I take off everything that I wouldn't eat,
yeah,
I'm just
not doing it.
I'm in a little itty bitty piece of meat and cheese. But some of the breakfast, she
got this tiny little slider. Just
Plus, I got pork rinds now. I'm in business.
Can eat the pork rinds all night?
Yeah.
It's got to be in your hotel room eating pork rinds.
Yeah, reading
flipping through
reading
magazines.
magazines. That's probably 100% of what I'll be doing.
Just like just locked up in your room with Phil Steele and pork rinds.
Yeah. You know what's funny? That's not very far off.
I know, it's just a funny imagery.
Not very far off.
Will asks on the stream, he wants to know, are you guys going to kick those live shows up again? Yes, sir, we are. We will get those details out to you. We're going to do 4 of them this year. So make sure you keep an eye out. We will get that information.
Wait, for the Breakfast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will
hopefully
we'll see Will out here as well as all of our other fine listeners. So we will get that information out to you shortly here. We're getting finalizing some details on that. But that is the show for today. We will be back tomorrow, and then we'll be in Indy for a couple days here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.